The Las Vegas Raiders had one of the worst offenses in 2025. And to be completely honest with you, it wasn't really due to the lack of talent. Now they did have holes in the offense, most notably on the offensive line, of course. And then I think that it was just really due to horrible coaching, horrible coordinating, all of the above, man, poor development. But all that's in the past. John Spytek filled, some of those holes, most notably, interior offensive lineman Tyler Linderbaum, but also they were able to get wide receiver Jalen Neller. Now, today, we're going to talk about the offense side of the ball. Man, majority, I want to get into this wide receiver room and just let you know what I think, man. So, yeah, let's do it. Before we get started, if you're new to this channel, if you love talking football like I love talking football, man, go ahead and subscribe. If you like the content, then like the content. And if you got something you want to get off your chest, then go ahead and drop a comment, man. Let's do it. Now, as it stands right now, from what I was able to gather, the current wide receiver room, if I'm not mistaken, it consists of Jack Bech, Trey Tucker, Jalen Neller, Dante Thornton, I believe Shedrick Jackson, and then Brandon Rice, right, the son of Jerry Rice. I believe he signed to a reserve contract. I think that's more so practice squad. So, oh, Derek Young, free agent signing, wide receiver slash kick returner. Those are the current wide receivers. I don't know if I'm missing anybody, but out of those players, the obvious starters would be Jalen Neller, Jack Bech, and Trey Tucker, right? And then I do believe that Dante Thornton has the ability to wiggle in that rotation. That's the wide receiver room as it stands. But I think what a lot of people are forgetting, that Kubiak runs a lot of 12 personnel, which is two tight ends at the same time. He also runs 13 personnel. He also runs 21 personnel. He also runs 22 personnel, with fullback and two tight ends, or, fullback and one tight end, whatever the case may be. So you have, when you talk about pass catchers, you have to talk about the tight ends, bro. You know what I mean? I never understood why you just think about the receivers. Like, bro, we have the best tight end in the NFL who's a pass catcher, right? We have another starting caliber tight end who I think is he's known to be a more traditional tight end, which I don't think so. I mean, if you go put on tape, you'll see that he's a better pass catcher than he is a blocker. And it's obvious if you look at it and not listen to what other people have to say. So you got Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, bro, in the lineup as pass catchers. So from what I was able to see, Clint Kubiak ran 12 personnel around 40% of the time. 40%, bro. Now he ran 11 personnel. He ran that around 40% of the time. And for some context, that ranked 29th in the NFL. So when people talk about the wide receiver room and, stacking the receiver room and we need this, we need that, where it stands, Jalen Neller's a starter. Jack Bech is a starter. Trey Tucker is your rotational piece, right? Dante Thornton is your rotational piece. That's your starting core right there, right? And then the offense, it's based around Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is your number one pass catcher. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where people think that a receiver has to be your number one pass catcher. That's not true at all. At all, right? Also, what Kubiak is known to do, if you look at offenses like what he did in New Orleans and then what he did in Seattle, the offenses, of course, you have your zone run scheme, right? That's not really going to change much. What I'm talking about is the passing game, right? So the receivers, we don't really need to bring in people that's going to fit Kubiak's scheme. We already had that. That's one of the biggest reasons why he came. We had the running back that fits the zone run scheme. We have the two tight ends that fits his 12 personnel. You know what I mean? We have Brock Bauer, we have Jack Besh, we have Trey Tucker. Those guys fit his scheme, right? And then they bring in Jalen Neller, who also fits his scheme, right? And then just what Kubiak does in general, where he doesn't have a specific passing scheme to where you need to bring in this guy, right? What Kubiak does is that he uses the players that he has and he brings out their strengths, right? So I think that's what we're gonna get this season. He chose the Raiders for a reason, you know what I mean? He didn't look at the Raiders like, yeah, they don't have the right players, but I'm gonna go there anyways. Like that doesn't even make sense. You know what I mean? So I'm excited for the players that we have there right now and what Kubiak could do with this roster. The wide receiver room, let's talk about that for a little bit, right? Now, Jalen Neller, free agent signing, stands at 5'11", weighing about 197. He ran a 40-yard dash at 4.5 seconds. Now, in comparison, who I compare him to is Makai Lemon, and that's a favorite name within the fan base right now. But I'm gonna tell y'all this: I don't. It's not that I don't like Makai Lemon, because I do, bro. He's a great receiver. Makai Lemon fan, USC fan, all that. But if we're just being realistic, Jalen Neller does everything that Makai Lemon does. Their game is pretty much identical. You know what I mean? So to bring in Makai Lemon would be redundant, bro. It'd be counterproductive. You know what I mean? Because you just signed Jalen Neller. If you spend a high draft pick on Makai Lemon, what are you gonna have him do? You know what I mean? Because Jalen Neller's already gonna be doing it. Or if you have Makai Lemon do it, then why'd you sign Jalen Neller to a 3-year contract? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? Now, in comparison to Makai Lemon, we already talked about the physical traits, right? But let's talk about football traits. All right. He has the route running, right? I wouldn't say he's an elite route runner, but he's an above average route runner. He is, because he understands leverage. He understands how to use his body. He understands how to attack angles. And it's not like he's slow, right? Jalen Neller is a former track athlete, right? He had a nickname Speedy for a reason, right? I don't really pay too much attention to 40 times, right? When you run a 40-yard dash, your main focus is running in a straight line and running as fast as you can, right? With the proper technique to run as fast as you can. That's not how you play football, though, right? Football isn't played in a straight line. You're not focusing on anything but running, right? You're focusing on a lot of different things, right? Especially if you're a receiver. If you're running through the middle, you got to know who's there, right? Are they in zone? What are they doing, right? You got to focus on everything, right? Focus on catching the ball, right? And that brings me to this. Jalen Neller has great focus. As a wide receiver, in order to be able to catch the ball, in order to have great hands, it's not, yes, you got to have strong hands, but you got to have great focus, right? If you don't have great focus, a lot of the times you'll see a defender, like they'll barely nudge a receiver, and that'll take a little bit of focus off their mind to where they drop the ball, right? Receivers are coached to keep your eyes on the ball, boom, see it through, right? See ball, catch ball, boom, see it through, and then run. Having great focus goes into that. And Jalen Neller has great focus. You can see it in a lot of the tape, right? The way that he tracks the ball, right? He tracks the ball, man, bro. He has great focus, and that allows him to have great hands, right? The routes that you can see him run, you might not see it in Minnesota, just based on the scheme, based on usage, right? But if you go back and look at his tape from Michigan State, the way that he runs routes, the way that he wins routes, just his overall style of play, it's very similar to Makai Lemon, right? And given USC catered to Makai Lemon, right? They had him at X a lot of the times, right? And that was their main focus. a little bit different for Jalen Nailor at Minnesota. But if you know what to look for within a person playing football, then you will see that their skill set is very, very similar, right? And so that's kind of my comp for Jalen Nailor. I know it's like switched, you know what I mean? Usually you do comps for prospects, I guess. I mean, if one comp is good for this, then it goes both ways. So obviously Jalen Nailor would be a comp for Makai Lemon. So, you know, Jalen Nailor, he has the ability to line up all different, you know what I mean? He could line up out wide as a true X receiver. He could line up in the slot, right? He could line up close to the line of scrimmage like a tight end, right? And that's where I think that he fits best in Kubiak's offense, right? Whatever they choose to do, however they choose to run it, I see him being in motion a lot and doing that to create mismatches, right? Doing that to put him on the run, right? As as somebody who played defensive back, guarding, let's say it's man coverage. If I'm guarding a receiver in man and he motions, I hate that shit, bro. I hate it because let's say it's press. I'm a DB, I'm going against a receiver. Boom, we're stand still, right? Stationary. He has to get through me, right? You got to make it through me in order to run your route. And receivers, they rather have space than to not have space, right? So if I'm in press coverage as a DB, if that's what you like, then I don't want space, right? I don't want to give you space because you don't like space, right? Because you got to run your route. So when a receiver goes in motion, that puts him on the move, which essentially gives him a free release, right? Because now I have to chase him while he's motioning, which gives him an advantage because he's moving and could just take off, right? It gives him favorable leverage as a receiver, right? And so that's what I see him doing a lot, right? And guess who did that a lot? Makai Lemon at USC. That's how I see him fitting in this offense, man, to get those mismatches, man, to put him in favorable predicaments, right? Jalen Nailor fits this offense perfect, man. And the way that he's going to be used is a little bit different than how he was used in Minnesota. And I'm excited, man. I think that he's going to be one of the main options at the receiver position. And yeah, man, that's my take on it, man. That's how I feel about that whole situation. Not only with Jalen Nailor, but Makai Lemon, man. It just doesn't make sense. They're the same player, man. But moving on, man. Another player I want to talk about, Jack Bech, right? I don't know if everybody forgot, but the comp for Jack Bech coming into the season was Puka Nacua, bro. Jack Bech stands at 6'2", 215. Ran a 40-yard dash 4.5 seconds. And guess what? Puka Nacua 6'2", weighs almost about 215, and ran his 40-yard dash in 4.5 seconds. Now, the way that they play the game is really, really similar, and that's why you get comps, right? They're not identical, but they have more similarities than they don't. They're not considered route runners, but they win based off of physicality. They win based on leverage and just overall bullying, right? That's how they run their routes. That's how they win. And not only that, they're able to finish by catching the ball. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Jack Bech only had one drop in 2025, right? He didn't get a lot of opportunities, but when the opportunities came his way, if you do watch football, then you would know, bro. Jack Bech caught everything, right? The only difference between the only obvious difference between Puka's game and Jack Bech's game is that Puka plays the game a bit faster than Jack Bech, right? 40 times are the same, but 40 times, if you watch my videos, then you know, man, 40 times don't really mean shit, right? That just gives you sort of an idea of how fast somebody runs, but that has nothing to do with how fast you play the game. Puka plays a bit faster, and the only real difference. But I say that to say this: Jack Bech has humongous potential, bro. If he's given the chance, if he's developed properly, right? If he's used correctly, the same way that Jalen Neller has alignment versatility, Jack Bech also has alignment versatility, right? You can line him up out wide, you can line him up in a slot, right? You can line him up closer to the line of scrimmage, like a tight end, right? He can win against anybody, right? If you put him on the inside, going against a smaller slot, he can bully him, right? To be able to win in his route. If you got him going against somebody that's bigger, then he can win with athleticism, right? He's not slow, right? He can move for somebody his size, right? For a receiver his size that plays the way he plays, he can move really well, right? He attacks zone really well. There is a narrative that came out that's like, he's not that good against man coverage, which the only thing that matters is if you finish, right? And the only way that you finish is by catching the ball. In the NFL, they say it all the time. You know what I mean? There's no real way to get open in the NFL, right? Like being locked down is being open. And you have to be able to catch in traffic. You have to be able to catch with somebody draped all over you. And Jack Bech can do that, right? He doesn't really need separation in order to catch the ball, right? That's how good of a pass catcher he is, right? He plays strong, he plays physical, and he can play through the physicality, right? Physical at the catch point. Jack Bech is a starter. All he needs to do is to be able to learn the system, right? Be able to get the verbiage down. There was a narrative in the rookie season saying that, he had issues with that. So, hopefully he's able to get a head start. Hopefully he's able to take advantage of this offseason. I do see Jack Bech and Jalen Neller being the main focus in the 12 personnel. Of course, there's different situations, right? If not those two, then of course Trey Tucker. I'm a fan of Trey Tucker, man. Trey is somebody that, and I know that it's, a lot of people have it mistaken to where, they see him being 5'8", 180 pounds or however much he weighs, and they automatically think slot, right? Trey Tucker's not a slot receiver. I don't even know what he played in college, but it really don't matter because colleges, the way the field is set up, it's set up for a spread offense. It's set up for high flying offenses, right? So you could put somebody like that in the slot and he can still work every part of the field, right? The NFL is different because it's set up, it's more confined. In the NFL, Trey Tucker is a boundary receiver, right? His skill set is fit for the boundary, right? On the outside. If you have him in the slot, you're most likely going to run an outbreaking route to where you get him in space, right? Trey Tucker's 5'8". He does not do well in he doesn't do well in busy spaces, right? He doesn't do well in crowded spaces. He's the type of receiver where you need space in order to get him the ball. All right. Yes, he does run a 4.3 40, but he doesn't have the short area quickness. You know what I mean? He doesn't have that burst, that acceleration to where you can use that to create separation. He needs to create separation by running deep routes, right? Deep outs, right? A post, deep crossers, right? Things like that. And you do those from the outside, right? You can run a deep out from the inside, and that's fine. But majority of the time, his skill set is best used on the outside, and that's where I see him playing. That's where I see him being more of a rotational receiver. I do think that I don't think that his skill set would fit like a three down receiver in this offense, just because he doesn't have that versatility, right? If every pass catcher that we have, for the most part, that's projected to start, they have alignment versatility. You're right, you could do a lot of different things, line them up a lot of different places. With Trey Tucker, you can't really do that, right? So that limits his usage. That limits his reps, what he's able to do, what situations he could be in. But when he is in, he's he's a good player, right? I expect him to have a good season. I expect him to be a great role player in this offense, but I do expect him to be wide receiver three, right? Third in line, Trey Tucker. That pretty much sums up the basic rotation that I see, right? Now, I don't know what they're doing. Of course, nobody knows what they're doing, only they do. But as far as the wide receiver room, that's the way it goes, man. Those are the three, and those aren't the main attractions, right? Like I said previously, the tight end is going to be the main attraction. The tight end is the main focal point. Those three guys are complementary pieces, right? Those three guys are people that can get open on their one-on-ones because they're doubling Brock Bowers. You know what I mean? Those three players are great complementary pieces, right? And that's the main reason why I don't think that they necessarily need a true X receiver. Everybody keeps saying true X receiver. Like the Saints didn't even have a true X, right? Chris Olave is not a true X. Chris Olave is a really good number two, right? Amika Ibuka is a really good slot, right? They had Cooper Kupp, but I mean, Cooper Kupp's on the tail end of his, you know what I mean? Like, didn't really do nothing. The offense that they run, it's based on the run game, right? That's the main attraction of Kubiak's offense, running the ball. And then the pass game is based off of running the ball. Not every single offense needs a true X receiver, whatever you think that is. You know what I mean? Detroit doesn't. Detroit never had a true X receiver. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that they have a number one pass catcher, right? A number one receiver. They have that in Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? And we have that in Brock Bowers. So that's how I expect that to be. You know, the wide receiver room is fine. That doesn't mean that they can't add during the draft. They definitely can add. I just don't see it happening in the second round. If they do it in the second round, that's fine. It's not like something, oh man, I'm opposed to. Like, don't do it. I'm gonna hate you guys. Like nah. But I just want to be real about the situation, right? We have a main focus running back. We have a main focus pass catcher. From there, we have players that can complement, right? Jalen Neller could attack deep too. Like, you don't need somebody that's, identical to Rashid Shaheed to attack deep, right? Jalen Neller can do that. Jack Best can do that. Trey Tucker can do that. You know what I mean? So the way that the pass catchers is, the way that the offense is set up right now, they're set to go. They have a good enough squad. They have good enough talent. They filled holes on the offensive line, man. As of right now, I see them being a top 12 offense, man, straight off the top, right? Potential to be a top 10. All that's dependent on the run game, right? Just like every single offense is dependent on the run game. And we got one of the best young running backs in the game, man. That's going to do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you learned something. I hope that you were able to gain some perspective in some way, shape, or form. This is the Antisocial Raider. If you love football like I love football, man, go ahead and subscribe. If you like the content, then like the content. And if you got something you want to get off your chest, then drop a comment. Yeah.